And this is something that Steve had raised earlier with regard to the legality or constitutionality of the position of the Prime Cabinet Secretary that has remained in question. And President William Ruto is now looking to restore public confidence. Arnold says perhaps the decision to, retain him is as a result of the need to keep government agenda and operations of government running. What are your thoughts about this demand by the Kenya Human Rights Commission, who are also asking that principal secretaries be sent home as well?
Michelle, I'd like to tell you something. When you build trust, it can take a very long time, but destroying trust takes seconds, and that is what the president has done. Kenyans trusted him to be the president of this country. Now the trust is gone, and he needs to rebuild that trust. And when you're rebuilding trust, you have to correct all your wrongs. And this is part of the wrongs that he did. Because even when he was electing this Prime Cabinet Secretary, people kept saying that that is not constitutional. But he went on to insist, because he's the president, he has powers to elevate someone from his Cabinet Secretary to become the Prime Cabinet Secretary, because he wants to reward his political allies. So he's putting his political allies' needs ahead of the needs of the general public and the citizens. So that's some level of selfishness that is still being portrayed by the president. And as a young women human rights defender, I agree with the Kenya Human Rights Commission, because it is the right of the Kenyans to have things done constitutionally, and the president is trying to say that I'm trying to do things the right way so that I do not go, because we started with Ruto must go. So he's trying to amend his ways so that he doesn't go. But if you want to amend your ways, you do the right thing, and that is not still the right thing, because we are seeing that he still is trying to show us that my political interests are above the interest of Kenyans. So we want those two people taken out of those positions, and we start all afresh.
Right.
And when it comes to the inclusion that he's saying, in this country we have a lot of inclusion talks, and I had Arnold saying that most of the time that we have to have intergenerational constitutions so that we can learn from the old, and the previous revolutions were led with that kind of collaboration. But what we've been seeing is that the government talks a lot about inclusion, but when you go to the table, we see that the inclusivity is just for diplomacy purposes, so that someone comes and says, oh, there's Meg here who's representing. No, we want like the real thing that's supposed to be done. We cannot be having a table of 70, no, not even 70, 90% old people, then you're telling us they're supposed to be intergenerational collaboration. Then when are these young people who you think are not ready to lead going to lead if you're not putting them in that position? Then when are we going to have new ways of leading and ruling and acting if we still have those old minds and old ideas being put on the table?
Right. Steve, do you agree?
One is there always a time in somebody's journey of life where you have to hand over the baton. And this is a generational change that is taking over, especially on the politics. And I think the president need to appreciate on how if you want to survive for the next 7 years, for this period and the next term, get a chance to be re-elected, he has to learn that things have changed. How he got elected, how he lured the voters, people have reminded him, big man, we have a constitution which gives you your mandate, which describes what you need to do. Kindly adhere to it. Kindly do away with some of these funny offices. You broke our trust. We don't trust you. We are so used to kutenga na kupanga, and people are no longer don't want those rhetorics. That's why I think the handshake could not elicit any excitement. Why? Because it's not the first time we are seeing the handshake. We have seen it. In our lifetime, we have seen handshake between Kibaki and Raila. We have seen a handshake between Uhuru and Raila. Then we see another handshake between Ruto and Raila. That cannot, those are the same formula. It has not yielded result, and you cannot keep on using the same formula. And there's something Henry Ford said, and it's one of my inspiring quote, that the greatest thing you can do to yourself is to keep your mind young. And why do you need to keep your mind young? Because at your young age, at the formative age, is when you have a vision That's the time you have a plan of your future. There's a career you imagine you want to have. There's a life you imagine with your family. There's a life you imagine for the country. So the moment you lose that aspect of the youngness in you and in your mind, you start becoming complacent. So these politicians who have been there, people like Moses Kuria who have been in government, you ask yourself, is it a politician or a leader whom I would desire my child to become? One, and the kind of statement he does. Is it a guy I want to be in government, to be representing us in international engagements? And the answer is no. That's why the president, as I mentioned earlier, need to do an inward looking and realize that his children, even those in his house, have come of age. I have seen his daughter trying also to come on board, try and help, try to mobilize people to support his father. Clearly showing him that even in your doorstep, people have come of age.
Okay. Arnold, what options then does the president have in the new look cabinet? Because the Kenya Human Rights Commission, for example, says that Ruto's cabinet should be capped at 14 members, with at least 2/3 being women. Then two-thirds gender principle implemented in the cabinet, including a fair number of youth and persons with disability, genuine representation of Kenya's ethnic diversity, but also of Kenya's demographic dividend at the end of the day. What are your thoughts on the options the president has moving forward? Because all eyes now are on the decisions and the people that he chooses, the integrity that they hold.
What the current impasse has done is to give the president a blank check to rewrite the government he actually wants to have, and to also help us rewrite the history of this particular country. So when he speaks about a broad-based approach to reconstitution of the next government, the president simply means that we have to go back and look at the framework that we have and the desires that we have and do the best with it. So you talk about options. I think in this particular cabinet we did not have anyone under 35. We did not have anyone under 35, unless I'm wrong. But I remember that at the time of constitution of the cabinet, there wasn't any. But Michelle, permit me to actually answer that question by looking at the state of the nation. Number one, there is a problem between Generation X and millennials in political parties. What you have seen, the jostling in political parties is that you realize that millennials have come of age and now they feel, look at Babu Owino, for example. He doesn't sit pretty with a few people in that particular party. You could see the problem with the Ndindi Nyoros of this world, the Kimani Ichung'was and the others. They're also having a fight because there is a generational handover that is happening under our nose, and the earlier generations don't know how to deal with these ones. And now, the Gen Zs have actually also, a number of them, about 5 million of them have actually now gotten to the age of majority, and they are serious about being part and parcel in the management of public affairs. So that too again is finding the nation not prepared. But Michelle, I'll ask you, I'll actually take you a little bit further in the things that people don't look at. You know, you could see this coming. We spoke about Vision 2030. We spoke about the youth glut and the youth bulge as we head to 2030, Vision 2030. It's about 6 years to the year 2030. Have we achieved our aspirations in 2030? But if you look at the Vision 2030 document, it speaks about such a moment as this. Look at some of the documents done, like scenarios that were built of what will happen. You could actually look at those documents and some of those conversations and feel like they were prophecies. There is one thing, for example. Do you know one single thing that has brought all this problem here? Is something called the National Youth Council. When the National Youth Council came in, it was pushed through under Agenda 4 of the National Accord. Right. Under Agenda 4, one of the issues was the National Youth Council. Subsequent administrations have dragged their feet to constitute the National Youth Council. Do you, Michelle, as in, these are issues that we need to have a conversation. Do you know that we have had a near youth revolution? You can call it a youth revolution. And even the remnants of what is the National Youth Council did not issue even a statement. That we had young people in the streets issuing, doing all manner of things, and there was no single voice from the Ministry of Youth. Right. That for all that, what does it say? That people deliberately killed the National Youth Council. And it might have looked so small. You remember the story of a rat that went and told the hen that I have seen a trap put in there. And the hen told the rat, I am not a rat. So why would I be worried about that particular trap? But when a snake was actually captured in that trap, it beat the farmer's wife who became sick. On the day the farmer's wife was sick, they slaughtered the cock. And the day she died, they slaughtered all food to ensure that so mtego wa panya ushika walioma na wasiokuwemo. I can tell you that one of those things that has actually precipitated these particular changes today stem from a very small thing: having a vibrant National Youth Council as a framework where young people can actually engage in a structured manner with legitimacy. We have refused to turn the National Youth Council into an employment bureau. Everybody that came in, there was this talk about professionalizing the National Youth Council, yet the National Youth Council was the only state agency where young people would vote for the people at policy level. We refused to do elections. We've made it so difficult. Last year, I even had a conversation with some few people in power and told them, do the National Youth Council elections. They refused. Just imagine the energy you saw this year. If it had been channeled through a proper, let me use the president's word, a broad-based approach, the way we did in 2012, that young people from the sub-location level vote for their leaders and have a structured way of engaging, a lot of that energy would not have ended up here. But quickly, Michelle, there's something that we shouldn't forget here. The place of parliament. I have seen Mheshimiwa Nabwera here speak so forcefully about what his party cannot do and what they shouldn't be doing. Wherever parliamentarians are, they should theme themselves. Because the thing that is standing between the people and parliamentarians and running over parliamentarians is the Constitution of Kenya. That's the only thing that is actually giving them the voice. You've heard him speak, and even the voices they have. Because we did away with imperial presidency and the powers that the president of old had, and we accumulated a lot of power and put it in parliament. The thinking at that particular point was that so many people coming from different persuasions cannot conspire against the people. We cannot be told about parliamentary capture by the executive when the president spoke about austerity measures and told everybody to cut traveling and everything else. I saw even opposition MPs, including Otienda Molo, speaking eloquently and telling the president to keep off parliament because it's independent. Why is it that it's only in the administration of the affairs that favor common mwananchi that they are captured? But when it's about them talking about their interests, they are unified and they speak, they have a voice. Right. So, Michelle, kindly, just a moment. I know we have got about...
No, we must allocate equal time to everybody.
No, for parliament. So I have to do justice to parliament.
I will be coming back to you. I wanted Margaret to begin with the conversation on parliament, because even the Kenya Human Rights Commission is now calling on Kenyans to begin preparing to recall MPs who backed the finance bill and those who they feel have failed in their mandate, have been implicated in corruption scandals. What are your expectations as Gen Z now on the parliamentary outlook? Many say that Parliament has made it difficult legally to recall a member of Parliament. But do you expect Parliament to behave differently now with the events that have happened in the last 1 month, and especially just the invasion of Parliament itself?
I don't think that I expect Parliament to behave differently, because if after we have been doing all this, there are still members of Parliament who are taking goodies to their constituents to try and say, I even saw a video yesterday of Oscar Sudi saying, najua nyinyi tu ni njaa inawasumbua, so nitashughulikia hiyo njaa. You see, they have a mentality that we are so much in need, that we so much need them to be there, so we cannot do anything about it. I know it's a long process to recall them, but we are very keen, especially on those members of Parliament who voted in years. And I have something to say. When it comes to the NGCDF, can it be taken out of the hands of parliamentarians? Because that is what is making them misbehave a lot. Because you cannot be a member of Parliament and you're taking 2 million to people every Sunday. Where are you getting this money? Because there is no one who is coming to ask you questions on the NGCDF, and you can misappropriate it the way you want, because there's no one, because you're still the same person who is supposed to be accounting for that and held accountable. So you don't want to talk about that when it comes to Parliament. So we need another body to oversight these members of Parliament, or take that out completely, because that means that then and that as Gen Zs, we have realized that this handout issue is what is making these people feel powerful, because they feel like, oh, we are still going to give you the 200, the less, or the kofia. So now Gen Zs are saying, we don't want your money. We want you to behave rightly. We want you to do what took you to parliament, to legislate. And if us coming to your house or the citizens coming to your house is what is making you embezzle fund, because we also realize you cannot be having a member of parliament contribute all his salary towards the people at the constituency, the wards, and then you don't also, let's also be realistic. We don't expect that person to steal. That person is going to steal because even his salary is not enough to satisfy the needs of those people. So we also have to come to a place where Kenyans realize that these are employees. Michelle, people don't come at your house to come and say these are our problems. The member of parliament is supposed to be in parliament legislating laws. So if we can separate that NGCDF from parliament, and then we also make citizens understand that it is not the role of the member of parliament to be contributing their dowries, their hospitals and all that. They're supposed to ensure we have good hospitals, we have economic empowerment, so that each individual has no responsibility going to that member of parliament to ask for money because they're economically empowered. Right. And kindly just allow me to finish on that. So that means that if these members of parliament have a salary, then they will use it for their own benefit. And then I think we also need to reconsider members of parliament going to sit down to get an allowance for a job that they ask themselves. Like, you ask us to vote you in so that you have that job. Then on top of your salary, we have to add you allowance to perform your job. Michelle, you're sitting here, you have a salary. No one is adding you an allowance for sitting here. Yeah, we all wish. So we also need to reconsider that members of parliament now will be going to parliament to sit so that they can be given allowances. It's their job, even if they travel, it's their job to go and travel to benchmark, because they're also being paid that salary. If they feel like that is too much, let other people who can do that job, because people are doing jobs and they're not being paid allowances to sit to do their jobs.
We must begin to wind up. Steve, what are your thoughts on this? And especially picking from what Arnold says, that when it is issues touching on the Mwananchi, Parliament is always divided, lack of quorum, lack of goodwill. But when it's issues touching on their welfare, members of Parliament themselves, let's slash budgets on these for members of Parliament, then they come together and protect themselves. Case in point is the recalling of MPs, and many say that it's been made a very difficult process, because as soon as you open the door on one recall, then it exposes all of them to that possibility. What are your thoughts? What are your expectations on the conduct of Parliament when it resumes in about a week from now, and whether Kenyans will manage to recall or possibly dissolve Parliament itself, which many say remains the problem in the administration now?
I go back to the Justice Maraga's regime when he was the CJ. By the time he was parting the office, he left us with a very serious parting shot on how the Parliament had failed to fulfill the Constitution under the 2/3. What was the problem? People, we are told they are in the canteen or the lounge, having beers and enjoying their good time, and failed to turn up to vote. So quorum was never achieved. Not once, not twice. They did that 1,000 times. We went to court, and the court gave an advisory about that issue. They never discussed about it. Until recently, I saw senators fighting and discussing from both the sides, the ODM and as in both the government and the opposition, and they were all trying to look at, they want to appease the Mwananchi. The parliamentarians themselves, when they were given the SRC recommended the issue of salary increment, they all went dashing in the social media claiming they don't want the money. When the hyena refuses to eat the meat, you need to know that things are not okay. The meat is either poisonous or they know there is imminent danger, and that's why they are avoiding to touch it. But they're hovering around there, hoping things are going to change. Then they dash in and pick and run away. Now it's time for Parliament to realize that that aspect of doing things is not the same anymore, because for a long time we have observed them and we always see how they do things. When it comes to issues of their salary, you find all of them full house, discussing, agreeing, voting. When we were talking about the finance bill, they were all saying their loyalty lies with the party. They are going to receive. I saw one of the member of Parliament saying that she wanted to pick the 2 million so that she can share with her constituent. And you ask yourself, we have to at this point where now you are sacrificing our future for the sake of giving us 200 shillings or 300 shillings, and yet we are asking for money. And I agree with Margaret on the issue of NGCDF. We need to do away with it, because for the longest time we vote people to go and eat instead of people to go and deliver on their mandate. If we have elected you to go and do parliamentarian job, do your parliamentarian job. The issues of women rep has a CDF bursary kitty, MP has a CDF and a bursary kitty, governor has a CDF kitty, president's office, the first lady's office has a bursary kitty. These are goodies which are meant to manage Kenyans and to be able to manage us and micromanagers. And that's what we are saying. We want to see economic and social liberation. Article 43 cannot be progressively realized. It has to be realized. Even progressive realization, you go to jurisdiction like South Africa, when they were explaining what is progressive realization. It is, you have to put in place mechanisms and structures.
All right, let's wind up. Arnold, what are your thoughts on this, and especially on the NGCDF issue, which members of parliament say is not within their purview, is managed by the CDF board, and so nobody can claim corruption in that end?
You know, that kind of thinking and this legalese around trickery is not something we really need to talk about at a time as this. Let's be real. Parliament, as made in the Constitution 2010, should not be handling the NGCDF. Whereas in law, or rather in the written law, you talk about members of parliament as patrons. What we have in parliament are not parliamentarians. A lot of the people we have in parliament are CDF managers. So you will find somebody not doing representation, but they will ask you, are my people complaining? Because I'm issuing CDF checks very well and everything else. We do not have members of parliament because, number one, a member of parliament should be doing representation. The voices you have heard here, you should have heard them louder in parliament. That wasn't there. There should be legislation. We still have got a lot of gaps within the legislative field. There's so much work undone. There are some laws that have been pending for the last 13 years. Why, for example, don't we have a Public Participation Act? We only have got guidelines. That bill has been on and off in Parliament for a very long time. Isn't it important to actually run with it? Seeing that people really want to participate, that is a bill of priority. We have not, 13 years since we got the new constitution, worked on the Public Participation Bill. The Public Officers Removal Act, the Impeachment Procedure Bill, it's been in Parliament since 2018 until now. We don't know how to remove a governor well, or even the president, or even an MP. It's been in Parliament on and off. Now, people want to participate in that particular process. We can't do that because that bill has never been prioritized. And I could go on and go on and go on. We need to have a people-facing Parliament. So, the NGCDF is illegal. And for me, I will tell you that is the peremende that makes Parliament the mules that we have today. But the MPs should be wakue wapole hata wasiongee during this particular point. Because by the time people invoke Article 1, that all power belongs to them and they can actually exercise it directly, when people are choosing to take back the power, yet the place of representation is the house of the people, which is Parliament. Parliament needs to do soul searching. Like I said, what stands between Parliament and the people is that there is the Constitution and then there are laws that are stopping people from recalling them. Otherwise, they would go home. Michelle, no one has ever been jailed. There is no member of parliament who has been jailed for misusing CDF. You said that MPs will say that they don't control CDF, yet if an MP dies, the one that comes in, the law allows for reconstitution of CDF. Why is it that if an MP is removed or dies, we reconstitute the committee, but the MPs are not in control?
On parliamentarians is one that needs a lot more time, but we're out of time, gentlemen. Many thanks for speaking to us. And that is the views of Arnold Maliba, who is the UDA Strategic Communication Advisor. Also with us in studio is LSK Council member Steve Mbogwa, as well as Margaret Mushoki, who is a Gen Z activist, as we discussed that pressure by Gen Z that has led to the dissolution of cabinet, with President William Ruto promising a raft of changes, more changes in his administration, and Kenyans now calling for the dissolution or recalling of members of parliament. Many thanks for watching us this morning. My name is Michelle Ngele Obiambo. Good morning.